Howdy, howdy, it's me. I decided to do a video on my journey. Um, as you can see, I'm in the hospital. It's the first morning of being admitted in here. I was admitted yesterday, um, March 26th, I'll say about 4-ish or 5-ish yesterday afternoon or evening, whichever one you want to call it. And I'm in here because the sickness I didn't think I had, I found out I did. And I figured I would do a video just to tell my story on my experience so that I have something to document for my own personal reasons and something that I can share with others to help them understand about the misdiagnosing of symptoms so that it may be able to help others. Okay, so here's how things started. Near the beginning of March of this year, 2021, I had to pack because we're in the middle of a move. Now, mind you, I'm allergic to pollen and dust and all kind of stuff. So I have a history of anytime I start moving stuff around that's been sitting around for a long time, I have allergy symptoms. So my throat started burning first, and then all of a sudden, within a day or two, I started coughing real bad. So now my asthma is triggered. Asthma switched quickly into, well, let me pause right here. If you're a weak stomach, you may want to stop the video, but trust me, it's mindful that you continue to watch and listen and learn. Okay, now that I've said that, the coughing increased and my phlegm started turning colors. I was gagging at night. I was gagging during the day. Things went from clear to yellow to green real quick. I went through an entire first week of panic the next week. That was a Friday when I was packing. By Sunday, I had green colored phlegm coughing up. So I first I emailed my doctor's office because we got this app. And then on Monday, I tried to make arrangements to actually see my doctor because I was like, okay, I need some antibiotics or something, steroid, antibiotic, something that'll just stop it. So I couldn't get anybody to help me get an appointment. Things kept lingering. I kept trying to get an appointment for like a whole week. No callbacks, no response. So that following Monday, I had a notification that came on my phone that said, okay, well, you got a teleconference. So I said, okay, cool. You know, things was still getting nice and pretty colorful, rare colors, but never ever got clear. Many nights of not being able to sleep. I slept propped up. I couldn't lay back. Thankfully, by me being asthmatic, I had a nebulizer machine, which is an asthma machine that you inhale medication through. I was on it multiple times a day. I was taking Mucinex, nasal, anything just to help me get through those first few days. By the 10th of March, I started seeing blood streaks in the phlegm. So that scared me even more. So by that time, I decided to go to the urgent care because I knew I could get straight in. I went in. They asked me did I want to be COVID tested. And so I was like, yeah, sure, because thinking that I'm not COVID, but I knew I had a cough, it would be wise to go ahead and get tested anyway, just so that I can have a document that stated that I didn't have it while I was out in public, because I knew I was going to be coughing. And I knew like in a couple of weeks, I was going to have to go back to the job. And I know bronchitis takes a while to get over. So I did get tested. I had the rapid antigen COVID test, which came back negative. That's where everything took a left for me, because I kept relating everything to the negative COVID test. I'm sorry, my hair looks crazy, but I have starter locks, as you know, and I'm not finna mess them up on this cotton pillowcase. Okay, so, but I did get diagnosed with bronchitis and negative COVID test. So they gave me a Decadron shot and an antibiotic that I had to take at home, plus some more albuterol for my nebulizer. So I went home. It helped some, but not enough. I did get a phone call from a doctor later on that day. Or was it the next day? It was either later on that day or the next day. And they changed me to azithromycin and prednisone. So I started taking that instead of the, and the urgent care also gave me the Tussin pearls. So when I got the call from the doctor, I started taking the azithromycin, the prednisone, and continued taking the Tussin pearls. So by that following Monday, I think it was, I had to go into the doctor's office. And I spoke to the doctor actually then. So I was feeling a lot better, but the cough was still slightly lingering. But at least the colors had turned back to clear. That went on for a few days. So I just kept watching it. The coughing had slacked off some, but it never went away. I also started noticing that there was a pain underneath my left rib cage, but I was underneath a lot of stress, so I misdiagnosed it, thinking it was just an ulcer. So I was like, okay, no, never let my stomach get empty. Just, I always had something nearby I could nibble on. And it was a very uncomfortable pain. But it was just like, okay, sometime it went away, but majority of the time it didn't. So I just kept it going. I pretty much did. Luckily, I was working from at home, so I didn't have to worry about going into the building. Technically, I should have, but I was one of the ones that was chosen to do an alternate task for my job, so that allowed me to stay home, which was a good thing. So it gave me time to try to get well, for one, because, like I said, I had been diagnosed with bronchitis, and I didn't want to be coughing around nobody and then have to explain to them, well, I just been tested negative for COVID, and I'm fine. So, trying to get my weeks mixed up because there's so much. The pain kept going. All right, and then comes this week. So that was like the 10th. Then the week later was last week. And I just watched it. The coughing lingered around. The color went away. I never had any more color in my flame ever since. Now, mind you, all this time, I also never ran a fever. Never had one fever. Check my temperature daily. Never had a fever. Never lost my sense of smell. never lost my sense of taste. Everything was still just normal, except for this lingering cough and the pain in my side, which, like I said, I thought was an ulcer. Sometime toward the end of last week, going into this week, I started wondering, did the bronchitis develop into pneumonia? Or was it developing into pneumonia? Because I started questioning the pain in my side. And I wasn't quite sure exactly what it was, but I kept saying, okay, maybe it's just, it's still the ulcer, but it was kind of hard to determine because usually if I had ulcer pain, it would stop once I start eating something. This particular pain wouldn't stop based on me eating. So that's why I started looking into pneumonia. So I was like, oh gosh, maybe it's the bronchitis has increased and gotten worse. But I never ran a fever. So basically, I wrote it off. Wednesday of this week, I ended up having to go back to work because we had some testing stuff to do at the job. I went into work feeling fine. The cough, I still had like the kind of thing clearing my throat. I really wasn't coughing throughout the day, like the day before, the day of, which was Wednesday. So Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I wasn't really coughing during the day. I may have had like episodes of getting choked kind of thing, but it wasn't like, it was real bad. It was like, okay, let's say I start laughing real hard and I'd be like, okay, don't make me laugh because it'll make me cough kind of thing. So it was like that. But like on a regular, just walking around, yes, I had shortness of breath, but that's because I knew I was fighting bronchitis. So I still didn't think about COVID. I was like, okay, there's still that possibility in the back of my mind that maybe it's just pneumonia. And I know pneumonia is not contagious, so I was just like, okay, I'm fine. Well, at least everything I've read about pneumonia wasn't contagious, because I don't know how the hell pneumonia can be contagious, but I don't know if it is or not. But I mean, I was always thinking it wasn't. Okay, so I went to work fine, feeling okay, other than the clearing of my throat. And that was it. When I got home, maybe about a good hour later, I started running this really crazy fever. And the reason why I knew I wasn't running a fever at work, because I was hot at work. I actually took my jacket off. I had on a sleeveless shirt. I took my jacket off at work. And I know that if you have a fever, you're going to be cold. So I took my jacket off. So there's no way in the world I had a fever at work. So, but when I got home that evening, well, I got home by 3. I got off at 3. By the time I got in, it might have been closer to 5 o'clock, I want to say. I started running this fever. And it was like out of the nowhere. I had remember when I got off of work, I was hungry. So I went straight and got me some Burger King. But for the first time, I wasn't able to finish the burger. I was just not hungry. Okay, I'm not sure what's going on with my phone, but I'm going to go back a little bit just in case I missed something. When I got off at 3, I did go to Burger King, grab me something to eat because I hadn't really eaten that day. When I got home, I couldn't eat the whole burger. And that's kind of odd for me because I never had any problem with it. It wasn't that I couldn't taste the burger. It wasn't that I couldn't smell the burger. I just didn't want it. My appetite was like very, very small. Um, and I found out during my research that with pneumonia you lose your appetite. So it was like a confirmation to me that I had pneumonia at that point in self-diagnosing. Moments later, I started running a fever. And that's when I found out, like around 5-ish, that the fever was present because I started getting real cold. I was so tired, but I was so cold. And I took my temperature with my oral thermometer, which ended up being like 101, 101 point something. I text my daughter because my daughter has a face scan thermometer. And I asked her, did she have it with her or was it at home? She didn't respond back because she was at work. But when she came in, she asked me for mine. Well, I asked her for it, and she let me use hers, and it hit red instantly. I was in the 101s, I was in the 102s, and I even hit 103. So I was like, okay, baby girl, because I know she is allergic to a lot of medicine, so she want to always have the Tylenol. I'm like, can I get some of your Tylenol? Do you have some? But she only had a leave at the time, so I took her leave. Later on that night, I started sweating profusely, just pouring sweat. Kind of find out that's when my fever broke. When the fever broke, I went back to feeling okay, like it had never happened. The next day, when I got up, that was Thursday morning. That was Wednesday. Yeah, that was Thursday morning. I called the doctor's office. And I spoke with someone at my doctor's office. And they told me that the fever was like pollen related because a lot of people had been calling the office about the pollen. So I was like, okay, that's logical because I'm allergic to pollen and pollen is everywhere. It was in my car, in the garage, it's outside, it's everywhere. So, okay, yeah, I can get down with it. I'm allergic to pollen, of course. By mid-afternoon, my fever was back. And I was like, okay, well, this is interesting. Pollen, okay, keep it moving. But I still wasn't half eating. I was forcing myself to drink stuff because I didn't have an appetite for nothing. I didn't want nothing to eat, didn't want nothing to drink. I just wanted to sleep. So I'm forcing myself to get stuff done. I still had this major shortness of breath. As long as I was sitting down like what I'm doing now, I was good. But once I got up and started trying to walk somewhere or reposition myself in bed or sit up or something like that, it was hard for me to catch my breath. My daughter came in that evening. My fever had broke by the time she got off work, but it started coming back. So I ended up taking some more medicine. Mind you, also during this time, I was taking aspirins. I increased my aspirin dosage because my heart kept racing. But I'm thinking it's because of the fact that I was on so many different steroids. And I had been taking the nebulizer machine, which does increase your heart rate. And then I also just remembered I had diarrhea, excuse my terminology, but I'm being visible here. But I didn't think about COVID once again because I had been tested negative on the 10th and I was taking antibiotics. And because I'm allergic to two big antibiotics, a lot of the other little antibiotics I'm given tend to tear my stomach up, which is normal. So I was like, okay, I'm good. That night we had a tornado warning that tornadoes had touched down in nearby counties, and we had to take cover because it was heading in my county. During when they released everybody, the tornado warning's over with, we're good, we can go to bed. I was trying to get up, and I started feeling real weird. It was like all of a sudden I felt like I had to vomit. But it was weird because I felt like I had to vomit and I felt like I had to poop. The room was like I was getting lightheaded, and I felt like I was getting ready to black out. I immediately instructed my daughter to go get me a bottle of water. All my CPR training went out the window. I couldn't remember what it was I really needed her to do. But the only thing I come up with is give me some water. So she got the water. She literally almost about to drown me with the water. But she was helping me drink the water. So once I got some water in me, it subsided the symptoms. And she helped me get to the living room where I could sit on the sofa. Because the bedroom was too far. I wanted to go to the living room so I could just sit up. So I sat up in there. That was like midnight. It was after midnight when this warning was over. So I sat in there till like 4 o'clock that morning when she finally woke me up good enough for me to like, okay, I can go to bed now. Because of that incident, I was like, okay, this doesn't sound like anything I could think of other than pneumonia. And for me blacking out, that could be a very dangerous warning sign of pneumonia. So I decided to get an Uber because that morning I was afraid I was going to black out again trying to drive to the ER. And so I took an Uber here to the emergency room yesterday morning after my daughter went to work because I didn't want to upset her or frighten her that I was coming. Because I knew if she knew I was going, she would have wanted to go too. And it wouldn't have been safe for her to come now that I know what I have. Because they would have sent her home. When I got here, it was hard for me to check in because I had to walk from the car at the front door into the waiting area, and trying to stand there, it was hard because I needed to sit down because I couldn't have breathe. I did sit down. They called my name, and then I had to go over to the other side to do the vital signs, which was extremely hard for me to do because I still, once again, I had to walk, which took my breath again. From there, they gave me a wheelchair. So walking was limited, was obsolete at that point. So that made it easier. After I did my triage, I was sitting in the waiting room waiting to go to my room, and I had another one of those spells that I had the night before where it felt like I was going to vomit, puke, and pass out. I told one of the people who worked there, who had just took a patient out, I was like, ma'am, can you please tell somebody I'm finna pass out? She was like, you can go over there and tell them. And I'm sitting here like, how? I'm in a wheelchair. And if I get up to go tell somebody I'm finna pass out, I'm going to hit the floor. But it was just like, okay, fine, whatever. I'll try to deal with this. The person that triaged me, she brought another person out. So I told her, and she was like, okay, they trying to get you in a room. And I'm like, okay, that ain't fixing my problem right now. I'm feeling like I'm finna pass out, literally. And it's like nobody's listening to me. It's just, I got to deal with this on my own from this chair. What am I going to do? Somehow, some way, through the grace of God, I got through it. And I didn't pass out. I did get called to a room shortly after the spell was over with. And I sat in there, laid in the room for a while. And I remember one of the first people that came in there. I can't remember if he was the very first, but he was one of the first. The respiratory person. And that's when I found out through him that I needed oxygen because my level was at 66, which is the lowest I've ever, in my lifetime, ever hearing my oxygen level at. Because with me being asthmatic, I've heard, 95? I've heard anywhere in the 90s. I've heard 100. But to hear 66 just blowed my mind off. So that's why I'm on oxygen. And they checked me since then. I mean, while I'm on oxygen, I'm at 100. But I'm afraid to find out what's going to happen if they take my oxygen off. Because I'm afraid of what that's all about. They ran so many different tests on me. I feel like a pincushion. I have been stuck more times than I can count. I lost count. Like, majorly lost count. It was always something being stuck with me. But this was just yesterday, not even counting last night. I had an EKG done. I had x-rays. I had a CT done with the contrast, which I almost threw up at the table. But the guy said it might have contributed to the fact that I hadn't eaten nothing. It was making me nauseated. Blood work. The numerous counts of blood work. I could not count it enough. Blood cultures, all kind of stuff. And then my world crashed after 4 o'clock yesterday evening. I was told, I was confirmed that I had pneumonia, which I had a feeling did. But I was also told that I tested positive for COVID-19. Yeah. So my journey begins. I had to tell my kids, who did not take it well. I had to inform my parents. And I had to tell my job. I have no clue what my job is going to say, because I feel like they're going to blame me for coming into the building on Wednesday with it, even though I didn't know I had it, because I was tested negative on the 10th. And overall, I felt fine on Wednesday. Nothing alarming Wednesday morning when I came to work. Things didn't change for me until over an hour later of me getting home from work on Wednesday. So I didn't know that I was that sick or had anything like COVID because I had been misdiagnosing myself, not understanding stuff, not knowing stuff, because the first test said no. So I didn't think COVID no more. COVID was the last thing on my mind. In fact, it wasn't even on my mind at that time. It was more of upper respiratory infection, bronchitis, pneumonia, anything. Bad cold, allergies, pollen. Hell, I was sick last year. Pollen, changing of the seasons. I mean, I'm asthmatic. Things like that happen. I have hella allergies. Should be living in a bubble. And then we're moving, so that's dust. So that's one of my biggest allergens. COVID was not a question in my mind. But here I lay in a hospital bed on oxygen. And the doctor doesn't know when I'm going home. Yeah. Because he's waiting to see, can I get off the oxygen? And my mind is like, OMG. My head still hurts. Oh, that's another thing. I also had a headache. But the only thing that contributed with that was dehydration. I haven't been eating or drinking much over the last few days. So, duh. If you don't eat, you get a headache. It's called a hunger headache. You don't drink, you get a headache. It's called dehydration. Duh. Yeah, COVID has a headache too. Surprisingly. But I didn't think about COVID. So, to those who are watching, be careful. You can get it from anywhere. Be careful of your symptoms. And just because one test says no, that don't necessarily mean you don't have it. That just means that test couldn't detect it. Yeah. Because the doctor told me also that he can't treat me with the COVID medicine because it's been too long for me having it. And I'm like, how is that when I was tested negative on the 10th? But that's still questionable. I'm not understanding that. Because I didn't even know I had it. I don't even know when I got it. I don't even know where I got it from. I don't know. I just know I got it. There's too many other illnesses that contain my symptoms. I know I have it. I can still smell. I can still taste. I just have a headache. I have a cough. I found out that the side pain that I was having is actually the fluid in my lungs. I still have that. And because of the fluid, I'm on oxygen. Because the fluid is hindering my breathing. So that's my story. I'm sorry this is all bashed up and botched up, but I had phone issues. I guess my phone kept running hot. Would I be tested? Vaccinated once this is over with? Yeah, I would. Would it matter? Because I already have COVID? I don't know. But I do know this. I don't want to go through this again. Am I afraid? Hell yeah. Why? Because I have pneumonia and COVID. And I'm here. But I feel through God's grace and His mercies, I'm going to get through this one day at a time. So I don't like making sad videos. I like keep my page uplifted. But I felt like this is something that was very important, that need to be said, it need to be shared to save the lives of many people, to keep you informed. COVID is not a joke. It's a real thing. And you have to do your part to make sure that you don't get it. Because no parent should ever have to tell their kids that they have it. Because Lord knows I never, ever want to hear my kids the way I had to hear them yesterday. I never, ever want to hurt my kids the way that I hurt them yesterday. I am their protector. It is my job to protect them. It is my job to keep them from hurting. I am their protector. With God's grace and God's help, they are my cubs, and I am their lion. I've gone to war for them. I've climbed many mountains for them. I sacrificed the world for them. But yesterday, I broke their heart. And I never want to ever do that to them again. So I'm begging and I'm pleading with everyone to please be careful. Take care of yourselves. Because this is something you do not want for yourself or for your family. So on that note, I'm going to end this so that I can get some rest and try to get better. Until then, next time, peace.